65 horsepower trap that might pop wide open, Rats.
Kansas City Chiefs absolutely phenomenal.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the TPT podcast. Today, we have a big-time guest, one of my favorite people on TikTok, someone that's so knowledgeable of the game of football and sports in general, one of my good friends, Josh Alderson. How you doing, Josh? It's good to have you on the show.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. Good to be here. Good to tell people what the right views of football should be.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got to, obviously, you're big on TikTok. For those of you who follow me on TikTok and follow you on TikTok as well, they know that we're usually on each other's lives, talking anything from NBA to NFL. And we got a lot to talk about. I know that you are a big Steelers fan, a lot to go over as the AFC North. There's the Steelers, there's the Bengals, Ravens, a lot to go over there. But before we get into a little bit of that, what was your grasp? We talk a lot about on TikTok Live of the Super Bowl. We're kind of getting everyone's opinion this offseason and how the Super Bowl went down. What was, some of your thoughts heading out of the Super Bowl?
Yeah, so I thought the Super Bowl was great.
3/4 of it was absolutely amazing. And I remember sitting there with my friends watching it and saying, this is going to be a top 5, top 10 all-time Super Bowl, all the way up until the game ended. I know it was a call. I know, the flag needed to be thrown there. The defender even admitted it, but it just, the way the game ended took it out of that top 10 contention.
Right.
That flag's not thrown. Kansas City has to kick a field goal there. Jalen Hurts, one timeout, minute 33 left to try to drive the field and tie and or take the lead. It was setting up for an amazing ending. And unfortunately, I feel like the biggest thing people are going to remember from this Super Bowl is going to be that ending.
Right. Yeah.
And then
no, you're good.
Yeah. And then I was going to say that, and I also felt for the first time ever that the MVP of the Super Bowl actually should have been someone from the losing team.
Right.
Jalen Hurts, 2 or 3 rushing touchdowns, touchdown pass. He literally carried that team for a lot of that game. And I don't think anyone can argue that he wasn't the best player on that field that day.
Yeah, and that's the craziest thing. I don't know if maybe going back to the 60s or something like that, but I don't think ever in NFL history it's gone to someone of the losing team. But if there was ever a case to do it, that would have been the game. Jalen Hurts played out of his mind, and the Chiefs it was more on the Eagles' defense than it was Jalen Hurts in that second half. Patrick Mahomes, almost had a perfect passer rating. Their offense was clicking. And then I think the experience came in, a team that kind of was maybe well prepared, knowing that there was going to be a long halftime coming out of the halftime. They've been there 2 other times. And, Patrick Mahomes, hitting on all cylinders in the second half with a guy like Kelsey. You're familiar with, good deals. You're a big Steelers fan. You watch, a guy like Hines Ward and, Big Ben, Antonio Brown and Big Ben. Speak a little bit about what Patrick Mahomes and your thoughts on him and Kelsey, what they've kind of developed, and maybe some of the future of the Kansas City Chiefs right now.
Yeah, no. So Mahomes and Kelsey definitely top 10 all-time duos. I don't have a ranking done for that. That's something I should probably do for a TikTok later. But when you say Mahomes and Kelsey, you think Brady Gronk, you think Montana Moss, Big Ben AB, some of those great just partnerships.
Right.
And so definitely, I think that played a major factor in Kansas City winning. I mean, whenever Mahomes needed to get something, Kelsey was right there to get it for him.
Right.
And Kelsey to me is the second best tight end of all time.
Right.
He's unbelievable. The dude just knows how to play. Honestly, I think he should give his Super Bowl ring to his brother because if it wasn't for him, he would have been kicked off Cincinnati
Right.
and
Yeah.
not had an NFL career. So,
Right.
maybe that Christmas gift needs to be that Super Bowl ring to his brother. But no, the duo-ship there is absolutely amazing. I don't know really other than like Brady Gronk if there's a better quarterback tight end partnership I can think of through the NFL.
Yeah. John Elway and Shannon Sharp, that would be the closest.
Yeah. Maybe even like Breeze and Jimmy Graham in those early years,
Right. Yeah.
but it never developed into what these two seem to have chemistry wise.
Yeah.
It just seems to work really well. I mean, for Mahomes though, I'll definitely be interested. Kelsey's 32 now,
Mm-hmm.
so he's got, I don't know, maybe 2, 3, 4 years left of high play
Mm-hmm.
left in him. So, I'll definitely be interested to see what Mahomes does down the road when he doesn't have that guy.
Yeah, that security blanket.
And I said the same thing when Hines Ward retired. What's Big Ben going to do without? Because realistically, Ben had two at the beginning of his career. He had Hines Ward, and a lot of people don't give Heath Miller the credit I think he deserves as being one of
Big
the
time
great tight
player.
ends.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely going to be interesting seeing what he does moving forward. I think he'll be great no matter what. I mean, he's proven that he has all the intangibles of being a great NFL quarterback.
Right.
But I mean, we've also seen great quarterbacks underproduce over years when teams are going through rebuilds.
Right.
You can think of like some of the Breeze years in New Orleans. You can think of Montana when he went to Kansas City. His numbers weren't the same. So, that's definitely going to be an interesting factor, I think. I think he'll be fine in the long run. I mean, the dude's a couple more things away from having a legacy as good as some of those all-time greats.
Right.
But, kind of like how people said you got to see what Brady can do without Belichick. I want to see what Mahomes can do without Kelsey.
Yeah. And, who would have thought that Kelsey would be putting up these type of numbers at 32? So, that'll be curious to see how much longevity Kelsey can have. Is he going to be like a guy like Jason Witten, he's playing till he's 35, 36 years old? And, in your mind, the Chiefs, they just won a Super Bowl, great season, all that. What do you think what do you think the Chiefs need to do either in the draft or in free agency to maintain that success and try to run it back? And we'll get on to some of the other teams in the AFC as well.
Oh yeah, no.
I mean, to me, I feel like it's three major factors for me. One, I think they need to add a second pass rusher. I mean, their defense was good. They're getting pressure, but other than Jones on their defensive line, they need one more guy.
Yeah.
I definitely like to see him go out and get there's 4 or 5 very good pass rushers, outside linebackers in the draft this year.
Right.
So I'd like to see him take a shot at maybe one of those guys. I would love to see them sign one of the big free agent wideouts or trade for D-Hop.
Yeah.
I also feel like there's some other wideouts who could be on the chopping blocks for teams that they could trade for. I said season this year before the trade deadline that they should reach out to Carolina about DJ Moore.
Yeah. There was a lot of talks about that.
So I definitely feel like there's a wideout out there. Juju's great. I mean, I'm a Steeler fan. I watched Juju from early career develop.
Yeah.
And he's definitely one of the best possession wide receivers Mahomes has ever had. But he's not going to open up the game for you if he doesn't have someone opposite of him.
Right.
We saw that in Pittsburgh when AB left. Juju still put up solid numbers, but he wasn't Juju anymore.
Right.
So they definitely need, I feel like, something opposite of Juju. Whether that's the draft or going and getting someone, I don't know, but I would love to see like D Hop end up there, DJ Moore. Um, Another guy that I think they could target is maybe Hollywood Brown if Arizona's fully going into this rebuild.
Right.
If the Rams decide that they're doing a rebuild because they're letting Bobby Wagner walk and stuff, maybe see if they can get Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I've seen that on Twitter actually a lot recently.
And then the other guy that I know is not satisfied with his team right now, Stephon Diggs. After that loss, he wasn't happy.
Yeah.
So maybe you could reach out to Buffalo and see if you could work something out there. I don't know if it would happen, but there are definitely some names on my board that I'm watching to see what happens this offseason.
Right.
In the wideout position. So I definitely think they need something because, the moment Kelsey loses a step, he becomes more of a possession tight end than the big play guy.
Right.
So you're going to need that home run guy. And I don't think it's MVS and I don't think it's Hardman.
Yeah. And, Hardman is, free agent. We'll see if he even comes back with the team. Juju, they're going to have to re-sign him. The wide receiver market right now, there's not a whole lot of names out there, at least in the free agency wise. Trading wise, that's a different story, but free agency wise, speaking a little bit about the free agency as we move a little bit away from the Chiefs here and move more into the NFL in general, because this will play a factor into some of the guys the Chiefs do sign. I'm going to start naming some guys. You tell me the perfect fit for these guys. So the first one I'll start out with is Alan Lazard. He's a free agent. Where do you see Alan Lazard landing?
So Alan Lazard, I actually really like. I don't think Green Bay is going to re-sign him. They have those two rookies from last year who I think did really well when they were healthy.
So I don't feel like Lazard's a priority for them. But what Lazard is a great number 2 wideout.
Yeah.
He's a great number 2 wideout. So if Buffalo can smooth stuff over and keep Diggs happy and keep him there, I think if you give them Lazard to be opposite of Diggs with Gabe Davis on the outside, Lazard being that big slot wideout type guy, I think that could be just money for Buffalo. The other place that I think could really use him, that I think he would be welcome to highly, is the Giants. The Giants just need something.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Yeah, they do. I could definitely see that. They it's gonna leave my head. Yeah, their wide receiver, he was on the Bills practice squad. He had a good season for the Giants this year. I think it's Isaiah Rogers or
Robinson.
Yes, yeah. He had a good season at the wideout position for the Giants, but they need depth at wide receiver for Daniel Jones. There's not a whole lot over there. They had Kadarius Toney. He got chipped off to the Chiefs. So I think New York is a good fit. I think, like you said, Buffalo. Gabe Davis hasn't been the healthiest player. We know when healthy, he's a good receiver, but he just hasn't been that healthy the last 2 seasons. And they need reliability.
And Diggs and Gabe Davis are very similar, where they're more of a home run style wideout. And I think that's one of the problems that Josh Allen has, is both of his main targets are home run guys. Even Knox is more of a big play tight end than a possession tight end. So I feel like they need that possession guy, that guy who can run into the middle of the field, be a big body wideout, catch that little 10-yard dump off, 8-yard dump off when Josh Allen is in trouble, and just keep the chains moving.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things about Josh Allen. He's such a great player, but I think sometimes he'll, maybe see those receivers downfield and thinking, oh, I can fit that window, and then that's when either it's an incompletion. We saw that a lot in the playoffs. As he tried to fit balls to Gabe Davis or Stephon Diggs deep down the field that weren't there, or he forced passes that he waited for those guys to get downfield and either led to a sack or an interception. So Buffalo and New York, I think, are great landing spots for Alan Lazard. You mentioned a guy earlier, DeAndre Hopkins, and are there any spots where you could look up in the 2023 season, that's where D Hop is going to go?
So I think D Hop is more worried about a ring than anything.
So I feel like he's going to end up on a team that has the best shot of winning. So, I mean, to me, it's Kansas City, it's Buffalo, it's the Eagles. It's I could even see Minnesota if Minnesota decides that they want to go all in this year.
Right.
So I feel like he's going to end up on one of those top end teams. But my interesting dark horse spot for him is actually Detroit.
Oh, wow.
Because Detroit was third in total offense this season.
Yeah.
They were the only team in the top.
Well.
Yeah, well, they were the only team in the top 10 of total yards that wasn't in the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
So Detroit, I mean, you have Ramon St. Brown, who is an absolutely unbelievable wide receiver.
Right.
But if you watch a lot of the games where he disappeared, teams were double and even triple covering him. DJ Shark isn't the answer. TJ Hawkinson got shipped off.
Right.
So to me, if Detroit thinks this is their time, Aaron Rodgers leaves Green Bay, this could be their year to win the division. If they go and get someone like a D-Hop to go opposite St. Brown, where you can't double either one of them now. And Jared Goff proved this year that he is a above average NFL quarterback. And if you give him the weapons, he's going to succeed.
Right. And, you hear me talk about this a lot on TikTok is, respect for Jared Goff this season, had over 4,000 yards, played really well, didn't have the best defense to support him, but did what he had to do on the offensive side of the ball. They ran the ball well with Jamal Williams. Is, Detroit that team? There's also T. Higgins out there. Do you think they're that team that could, you mentioned a little bit, that could take a step up, really be that team in the NFC?
I do. I mean, I don't know if they'll be that team. I think the Eagles are the NFC king right now. I mean, they're, it goes Eagles and San Fran, but I definitely see them in the argument of being one of those top 6-7 NFC teams next year if they make a couple right moves. They need a couple defensive pieces, and then I think they just need one more wide out. That offensive line is great. That defensive front is good. They get burnt because they don't have the best pass rush and they don't have the best safety play right now. So if they could get a safety and a pass rusher and a weapon opposite Ramon, I think it's their division to lose.
Yeah. I agree. I think the Lions need another receiver. They already one of the best offenses in the league this year. They got a guy like D-Hop. I think that'd be a great landing spot for him. Another name that's been connected to the Detroit Lions is one of the Steelers' rivals. That is the Cincinnati Bengals. What do you think the Bengals have to do with some of their moves this offseason? You have a guy like T. Higgins. Where's T. Higgins going to go? Do you see him back in Cincinnati? Or do you think that they're not going to be able to work out a deal and he's going to be traded elsewhere?
I think it's going to be hard for them to work out a deal. They have
a lot of pieces that they need, that they have money wrapped up into and are going to have money wrapped up into.
Right.
But the one thing that I said that they should do, and I think it's just a proven fact in the NFL right now, running backs can be replaced easier than wide receivers.
Absolutely.
So if I'm Cincinnati, I might even consider trying to move Mixon for some late round draft capital, free up that money, and then sign T. Higgins. And then with a second or third round pick that you get for Mixon, going out and just drafting one of those stout college running backs. Because I mean, Samaje Perine, he showed that he can catch the ball. He showed that he can play well when Mixon was out.
Right.
So you don't really need to replace Mixon because you kind of have that guy already. You need someone just behind him.
Yeah.
So if you could move someone like Mixon, free up a lot of capital, then you could sign T. Higgins. But if they're not willing to make a tough choice on a couple of these other guys, to free up some money, I think T. Higgins is out of there unless they franchise tag him and pay that luxury tax.
Yeah. So is there any team that you think, if they can't pay him, like you just said, where you could see a team making a big time move for him, with a second round pick, a first round pick, and
Oh
going
yeah,
all in for T. Higgins?
I definitely could. Three teams come to mind pretty quickly for me. One is Baltimore.
Yeah.
Baltimore has been just itching for that number one guy. They've tried signing people, they've tried drafting people, and nothing's quite worked out the way that they thought it would. And Lamar's not happy. You need to make Lamar happy. So I think T. Higgins would be a great target for them. I feel like that year that T. Higgins was the guy, the rookie year before Jamar Chase, I think he showed that he could be the guy. He basically pushed Tyler Boyd out of that role with his
Right.
talent. So I definitely could see him going to Baltimore. Another two teams that I really like for him, and it all depends on what they decide to do, but I could see Jacksonville going for him.
That'd be huge for Trevor Lawrence to get a number one receiver.
And on top of that, I feel like Jacksonville has a couple pieces that they could throw into the deal where maybe it's not draft picks. They have Calvin Ridley. They have he's coming back from suspension.
Calvin Ridley.
No, he's come back. He was on Atlanta. He got suspended for gambling.
Yeah, Calvin
Oh
Ridley.
yeah, Calvin Ridley. Yeah. They have Christian Kirk. They have
Zay Jones.
Zay Jones. So they have some pieces where they could even say like, hey, like, here's Calvin Ridley or here's Christian Kirk and a draft pick.
Yeah.
And I think that would catapult Jacksonville into a much higher setting for the AFC because I think Christian Kirk showed that he could be a very good wideout. I'm not sold yet on him being the number one.
Right.
I think he's a very solid wideout, but he didn't show enough for me to say that's the guy. So having someone like T. Higgins there could definitely be huge because then T. Higgins is going to pull the double teams and Christian Kirk's just going to get to run loose.
Yeah.
And then
no, continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. And then the third and final spot, and I mean, this just might be me dreaming, but I would love to see him come to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right.
And I think Pittsburgh could do something similar where they could say, hey, here's Deontay Johnson and a draft pick.
Yeah.
And we get rid of Deontay Dropson. And, you give T. Higgins and George Pickens, who are two very similar characteristic guys, I think.
Right.
I feel like T. Higgins could teach George Pickens a lot more than Deontay Johnson could. And I think it would also be more beneficial to Kenny Pickett to have another big body wideout with a large catch radius. And also a more trustworthy guy when it comes to drops. I mean, you could tell there were times that I was watching games, you could see that Kenny Pickett didn't want to throw that way because he was worried about a tip, a drop, an interception. Where I feel like if he had someone like T. Higgins, that hesitation wouldn't be there.
Yeah, and I think all those landing spots would be perfect landing spots, especially the Jags. So we like to talk about quarterbacks a lot, me and you. Trevor Lawrence, do you think if he gets a guy like T. Higgins, do you think that could catapult him to a Joe Burrow type level if he gets a true number one like that? Like, because we know Joe Burrow has Jamar. If Trevor Lawrence gets a true number one, do you think that could make him in that conversation of Joe Burrow and Josh Allen?
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, he showed what happens when you have an actual coach and an actual offensive coordinator. I wasn't worried about him after his rookie year. I said that at the end of the season to a bunch of people. I said, I'm not worried about Trevor Lawrence. That dude's a generational talent. He has the legs, he has the arm, he has the mind. I'm like, you just got to get him the right coach and the right system. So yeah, I think if you get him a true number one and he balls out, he's definitely in that conversation. I mean, I know a lot of people already have him in their top tens for active quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
he's right on the cusp of mine.
yeah, and we talk about the top 10 guys. We're going to get a little bit into our list of some of the other quarterbacks in the league here in a minute. But I like Trevor Lawrence. I thought he played good. He brought in a guy like Doug Peterson. Like you said, when you go from whatever that was with Urban Meyer, it just shows what good coaching can do. And you coach up a guy like Trevor Lawrence, because some people are saying bust and he's not going to be that guy. And I didn't agree with that. I think Trevor Lawrence can be a top 10 guy. It's just if he can get that number one guy. And even Calvin Ridley, if he can come back from suspension and be focused and ready to go, I think that's another good receiver for him in that locker room. If he's healthy, if he's focused and everything. But moving on to some of the other quarterbacks, what is heated rivalry the Baltimore Ravens gonna do with Lamar Jackson? You get to play the Ravens GM. I mean, it's probably not your first choice to be the Ravens GM, but you're sitting across from Lamar Jackson. You have a blank check. How much money are you putting on that check and saying this is as much as we're going to give you, Mr. Lamar Jackson?
I'd give him the 230 he's asking for guaranteed.
Wow. Okay.
Athletic wise, the dude is a monster. He's the most athletic quarterback in the NFL. I don't think anyone can argue that.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, I'm going to put some stuff in there. I'm going to say, hey, listen, Lamar, like we're getting the same throwing coach that Josh Allen worked with after his rookie year. You got to work with him for the next 2 off seasons. No questions asked. I don't want you doing OTAs. You're working with this guy for 2 off seasons. You're getting that throwing mechanic down.
Right.
But I'm giving him the money. Like, it's so hard to find a franchise quarterback in this league. I mean, when you talk about NFL busts all the time, I mean, your top 5 are always quarterbacks when you talk about true NFL busts.
Jamarcus Russell, Ryan Leaf.
Yeah. So, I mean, Lamar Jackson has proven he can be that guy. He has an MVP. He's taken him to the playoffs. And he's done that without a true number one.
Right.
I mean, realistically, he hasn't had a number one wide receiver, and he hasn't had that great of a running back.
Yeah, and they're always hurt.
Yeah, I mean, and those guys are solid when they're healthy, but they're not great running backs.
Right.
So give him the money, man. Just pay the dude.
Yeah, I agree. I think because Deshaun Watson got a similar contract. It's not a knock against Deshaun Watson. I don't think he's, 10 times worse than Deshaun Watson. It's not like, if it was Daniel Jones or somebody like that getting this huge contract. But I think he's looking at it like, Deshaun Watson, good quarterback and all. He's been a Pro Bowler, won some games. But, I've won an MVP. I've passed for 35 touchdowns, 4,000 yards, and rushed for 1,000 yards in one season. Not too many guys can, lean their head on that at the end of the day. And, he's had some of the injury problems, but, Michael Vick was a great quarterback. He never played a full season. When you're a running quarterback like that, you're going to have some of the problems. I do agree with you with the throwing things. I don't think Lamar is a bad thrower because, again, he has thrown for 30-plus touchdowns, I think, twice or maybe just once. But, he can throw it in there, but it's the consistency. One drive will go out there, and he'll just be throwing dimes. And I'm like, oh, my God, Lamar looks great in there in the pocket. But I think sometimes he gets happy feet. He thinks, should I run here? And he kind of gets, fuzzled, and he just wants to throw, and it's an inaccurate pass. So the consistency has to be there for Lamar. I think they should pay him. If the Ravens want to be a contender in that division, because, again, the Cleveland, what are they going to be with Deshaun Watson? They're going to compete. The Steelers are always going to compete. And then you have the Bengals. If you want to compete in that division, you're going to have to bring back a guy like Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and you got to give him a wideout. And then if I'm Baltimore, I'm going out and I'm trying to get someone from that Eagles organization from their offensive side to be the new OC.
And I'm telling them, I want you to do exactly what you guys did in Philly. I want you to get the ball out of his hands quick. I want you to move the pocket. And then I want you to take shots when shots are required, or run him when running is required. But or you need to find someone like the Steelers did with Ben there with Todd Haley, where you got to prevent him from getting hit as much.
Yeah.
So you need to change your offensive strategy around him a little bit and take some of that out, because what I don't want to see is the Cam Newton effect. I don't want to see him get so beat up in the next 3 years that he's out of the league.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing, like I said, the guys like Michael Vick, Cam Newton, any type of running style quarterback, and hopefully not Josh Allen. You never know. Josh Allen's a bigger guy. But those hits are going to add up no matter what. Those hits are always going to add up. So the Ravens are going to, maybe getting an OC is a good thing. You're going to have to maybe change your offense up. Say, what is the best thing we can do to keep this guy on the field the longest?
Mm-hmm. And I think those are the three. If I'm the Ravens GM, those are my three things. I'm paying Josh Allen, I'm getting a wideout, and I'm getting an OC.
Yeah. I like all those. So moving on to your team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. What are you're playing GM now? Now you get to switch over to the Steelers. What are some of the moves that you're going to make this offseason? First, we'll start with the NFL draft. We're going to get a little bit more into the draft here in a minute. But what are you doing if you were the Pittsburgh Steelers GM this offseason?
I am first trying to trade up in the first round so I can get one of those offensive guards or tackles.
Right.
You need one of them. Your offensive line was horrible. And then I'm going out and I'm trying to find at least one or two free agent offensive linemen who are like late 20s that teams just can't afford to pay. And I'm paying them. Right. And I'm completely revamping that offensive line. The next thing I'm doing, and I've seen the rumors on Twitter and stuff, but, Ramsey might end up, people are saying Ramsey could end up a Steeler.
Steelers, yeah.
And then I've also seen Bobby Wagner tied to the Steelers.
Oh, wow.
And if you get Bobby Wagner, that linebacking core becomes the best in the NFL. Think about it. You go from right to left, you go Watt, Miles Jack, Bobby Wagner, Highsmith. Highsmith had 12 sacks this season.
Wow.
And then you have Cam Hayward just chilling in the middle of that defensive line, with Minkah Fitzpatrick just playing on the backside. Yeah. They could be the most scariest defense in the NFL next year.
Right.
And then if push comes to shove and you somehow get Ramsey as well, that
secondary is going to be great.
Yeah, because now Wallace gets bumped over to the number 2 wideout, which Wallace didn't have a fantastic season, but he wasn't terrible.
Right.
He got beat up a lot there when TJ was out because the team just couldn't get the pressure they needed.
Right.
But when he was in, Wallace was fine. So now Wallace gets bumped over the number 2 guy. Ramsey's covering the number 1 guy. Minka's playing Troy Polamalu style in the back. And good luck trying to run, because now we don't have Devin Bush at 110 pounds soaking wet trying to take on a guard.
Right.
So, frankly, I feel like that's what the two things they need to do is they need to address that offensive line, and then they just need to make that defense top 3. That's how you did it with Big Ben in the early days to get a Super Bowl ring. And I think that's the formula for them. Get a good offensive line where you can run the ball with Najee. Keep Kenny Pickett there where he's not having to make throws day in and day out. At the end there, the last 2 games of the season, he showed under pressure, he can do it. Make the pass for the win. He did it against Baltimore and kept our playoff hopes alive, and did it the week before when he threw to George Pickens. And then I'm sure I'll get heat for this, but I'm trading Deontay Johnson.
Right.
I'm trading Deontay Johnson. I'm going out and I'm getting someone different to be another wide out there. I don't know who. I mean, there like I said, there are a lot of guys out there. There's Cooper Kupp, there's DeAndre Hopkins, there's T. Higgins, there's a lot of guys that you could go out and try to get.
Right.
So I feel like Deontay drops the ball too much. And I saw a crazy stat where it was something like, I think almost a third of Kenny Pickett's interceptions this year were tips by Deontay Johnson.
Wow.
And you can't. I get it. Some of them weren't great throws,
Right.
but a lot of them, I mean, he doesn't catch the ball well at times. I don't know what it is. He's led the league in drops for like the last 3 seasons.
Yeah. Yeah, big body receiver, but just has trouble bringing the ball down sometimes.
Yeah, so he's to me, he's got to go. And then I'm just gonna sacrifice Matt Canada. I'm not even gonna fire him. Like he doesn't even need to be on another team. He just needs to be sacrificed to the football gods for his atrocities of coaching.
So a new OC.
Yes.
Is there anyone out there you would like?
I said for the longest time, and I thought the Steelers were going to do it maybe when they brought in Brian Flores, that the GM was retiring, and I thought that Mike Tomlin was actually going to make the jump to GM and Brian Flores was going to be the new head coach.
Right.
It was just a crazy theory I had, but I would love like Eric Berry, who ended up on Washington.
Mm-hmm.
I would love one of the guys from Minnesota. I like their style of offense.
Mm-hmm.
The Eagle. Or give me someone from the Giants, man. Give me someone off of that coaching tree now from Day. That dude just shows he knows football.
Right.
So there are definitely some names out there. Also, Byron Leftwich, I think would have been a perfect fit. He's a Steeler guy. He was a backup for Tomlin for years.
Right.
He started games. He did a great job in Tampa Bay. I know this last year wasn't the greatest, but I don't think it was his fault. I mean, you lost, 3 or 4 starting offensive linemen?
Yeah, you lost 4 guys.
So, I would have signed Leftwich a minute after. Tampa would have been like, he's fired. I've been like, we're signing him. Twitter would literally have been like 101 Byron Leftwich fired from Tampa Bay, 102 Byron Leftwich hired by the Pittsburgh Steelers, 103 Matt Canada went missing.
Yeah, I think Brian Leftwich would be a great candidate for the OC job. He was a backup for the Steelers. Both their runs to the 2008 Super Bowl and the 2010 Super Bowl, played under Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, well, well, the first one was Charlie Batch, but yeah,
Charlie Batch.
Yeah, but he was part of those early 2010 teams where they were, the killer bees.
Yeah.
So I mean, he understands the game. The dude was smart. I liked him when he was the starting quarterback in Jacksonville. Always felt like he just didn't get a fair shot.
Yeah.
At it. But yeah, I mean, if it's me, I mean, he's off the Bruce Arians coaching tree.
He was with the Steelers for a while.
Yeah, he understands winning. He understands the game. And then on top of that, having a former NFL quarterback that started as a rookie now be the OC and the guy in charge of a second-year quarterback.
Yeah.
I feel like it would set Kenny Pickett up for more success in the long run.
Yeah, I think those would be great moves for the Steelers. Kenny Pickett's second year, the development of him. Speaking of some other quarterbacks, we're going to get to I'm going to name a quarterback off. You tell me, we'll do rapid fire if you keep or if you dump him, basically saying if this team should keep a quarterback, if it's this year or the next 3 years, they should keep him or dump him. I'll start it off with Zach Wilson.
Sacrifice him to the football gods.
Zach Wilson. Sorry, you got to go. Uh, the Packers staying with Aaron Rodgers.
I think you let him walk. You're clearly in a rebuild mode now. Get a couple draft picks for him, see what you have in Love, and then see if maybe in a year or two you got to take another shot at a quarterback.
Okay, is there any team that you want to shout out that you think you should go to?
I mean, he has to go somewhere where they're ready to win now. I think it's San Fran. I think if you put him on San Fran with Ayuk and all that team's just they're scary now. No shade on Brock Purdy. I think he did a great job, but Aaron Rodgers is a different breed.
Right, and that's another quarterback coming up. Is what about Trey Lance? Do you keep him? Do you trade him? Do you bench him? What are you doing with Trey Lance? You know, there's a QB competition going to potentially going on there with Brock Purdy, Trey Lance.
Yeah, I think you play out the quarterback competition this year.
Right.
You know, they say iron sharpens iron.
Mm-hmm. You let them two duke it out all off season, and then if Brock Purdy ends up beating him out, then you got to move on from Trey Lance. If Trey Lance, beats out Brock Purdy, then I think you try to move Brock Purdy. I feel like either one of those guys could get you a couple draft picks back. I mean, you're not going to get what you gave up to get Trey Lance, but I could definitely see a team like Carolina, Seattle, some of those, even Houston. Even though if they draft someone, I could see them giving up like a 4th or 5th or something just to get another guy in there with some NFL experience. But yeah, I think you play out the quarterback competition this year, then loser got to go.
Yeah. What about a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo? Where do you think Jimmy Garoppolo could land?
So I would think his best landing spot would be to go back to Bill Belichick.
With Patriots.
That was Bill's plan. Bill's plan was when Tom Brady retired to move to Jimmy
G. Yeah.
And Brady basically forced the Jimmy G trade.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think Mac has done well, but I think he's nothing more than an average NFL quarterback.
Right.
And I think that Jimmy G back there, either one, helps with the development of Mac Jones, or two, just takes the job and you can kind of move on from the Mac Jones experiment.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, Jimmy G. He's not gonna wow you with his passing or scrambling or anything like that. But he wins. He gets the job done. He's not gonna hurt you, but he's also not gonna go out there and throw for 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. But he's just gonna get the job done. Another guy, real quick, Derek Carr. Where is Derek Carr gonna go?
So, me personally, I felt like his best landing spot was actually going to be the Giants. I think Daniel Jones is asking for too much money. I think you could pay Derek Carr a lot less. I think Derek Carr has better arm talent. And I mean, yeah, you're losing the running capabilities of Daniel Jones, but I mean, other than this season of being a good, I don't even say he was a great quarterback this year. He was a good quarterback this year.
Right.
Derek Carr has been a good quarterback his whole career and has had a few seasons of being a great quarterback.
Yeah.
So, something like the Giants, I think, would be awesome for him. I also said Tampa Bay because Tampa Bay still has a lot of their pieces in place.
Right. Yeah.
So getting a veteran guy like Derek Carr to Tampa, I think, would also be a good landing spot for him. I don't like the New Orleans landing spot. I think New Orleans just needs to realize that they're so far over cap and so under talented for it that
they need to rebuild.
They just need to blow it up and just say, hey, for the next 5 years, we're going to be crappy, but we'll be back.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are great landing spots for Derek Carr, especially Tampa. There's every one of those teams in that division needs a quarterback. Carolina, Bucks, Saints, Falcons, they all need quarterbacks. What is the first quarterback in the draft that you see going off the board first? Who is going to either move up or who's going to select the first quarterback in the NFL draft?
So I think it's going to be Bryce Young.
Really?
I think he's going to be the first one off. And
Oh,
and
what
the only
pick?
reason I think he's going to be the 101. I think Chicago's going to
Wow.
trade back. I think Chicago's going to. If I'm Chicago, I'm taking that 101 pick and I'm trading it to like Houston or the Colts, and
Oh,
I'm getting. And I talked about this on another podcast. I said if I'm Chicago's GM, I'm going to turn that one pick into almost 8 picks by the time I'm done. So if I'm
yeah.
then, I'm going to call Houston and say, hey, Houston, give me the 102, a second, and a third, and we'll swap first round picks. So that
Yeah.
way you can get whatever quarterback you want. So now you've turned that first pick into a first, a second, and a third. Then I'm taking that
Yeah.
102 and I'm going to the Colts and I'm saying, hey, you can have whichever other quarterback you want. If they take the guy you want, you still have the other 2 options. So give me your 104, give me your first round next year, a second, and a fifth. So now you go from 102 to 104. You accumulated 6 more picks.
Yeah.
Now at the 104, you can either keep it and grab one of those top-notch defensive players. You can grab one of those top offensive linemen to try to protect Fields. You could grab a wide receiver, or if you're smart, you take that 104 and you go to Seattle and you say, hey, why don't you give us the 105 pick and give us a second and a third and we'll swap and you can get whoever you want. And by the time you're done from that one pick at 101, you've accumulated probably 2 or 3 first round picks. You've accumulated 2 or 3 second round picks, 2 or 3 third round picks, and probably 2 or 3 fourth and later round picks
Yeah, absolutely.
over the next 2 seasons. So you are sitting pretty for a rebuild. I mean, you're almost at
Yeah.
Detroit level, where you could go in and you could say, cool, we're gonna take the best available offensive lineman, we're gonna take the best available offensive lineman, and now okay, cool. Now we have 3 rookie offensive linemen who are all 5-star recruits who played at top division schools and dominated, protecting Justin Fields. And then the next, in the second round, you can take the best available wideout, the best available running back, and give him his weapons. Or you can take cornerbacks and safeties and linebackers and defensive linemen who should have been first round picks, but just because of how the draft fell, ended up in the second or third round.
Right.
And it happens all the time. Look at George Pickens. George Pickens should have been a first round pick last year. Fell into the Steelers' lap in the second round.
Yeah.
Breece Hall, the running back.
Yep.
he
Great
fell.
running back.
So you could get the guys who you need to get in the first rounds with all these extra picks you've accumulated, and then get the extra pieces with the later round picks that you've gotten, plus all the picks that you've still kept in the second and third rounds.
Yeah, that is true. And again, the Bears. For me, I don't know if you select Bryce Young. He may be the first quarterback draft off the board, but I think they should maybe try to write it out to a guy like Fields, and try to trade back. Basically essentially what you're saying is, add up your picks. If Houston wants to try to, no, I'm sorry, the Bears are the first round pick, or is it Houston?
Bears have the 101, and that's why I said, to me, there's no world where the Bears actually make the 101 pick.
Like in every mock draft I've done, they've traded out of that first round pick, and it's gone to either
trade out.
And it's gone to either Houston, Indy, or Carolina to get Bryce Young.
Yeah.
And that's just because of the success that Alabama quarterbacks have had of recent.
I agree.
Tua,
I agree.
Jalen Hurts, and even though Mac Jones hasn't been a world beater, he's been a good quarterback. Like, you're not going to be mad as a Patriot fan if Mac Jones is your quarterback for the next 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, unless they don't, they don't turn it around.
Yeah, but I feel like it's more than just Mac Jones on that one. I mean, he has the Lamar Jackson problem of no weapons.
Yeah, I get that, but I also think people look at it like this is, I think they look at some of these other Alabama quarterbacks and they look at maybe the talent around them, and that scares them a little bit. is they look at, and not so much of Bryce Young this year. We can't say that necessarily of Bryce Young this year because I can't name you too many of his offensive or at least pass receivers. Gibson was a great running back for Alabama this year, and he went to him a lot in the receiving game. But he didn't have the best talent. He had good tight ends, not at the wide receiver position. Mac Jones, Tua, and if you want to count Jalen Hurts for the first 2 seasons before he got benched. He had some great receivers that came to there, Devontae Smith. And you also have a guy like CJ Stroud. Where do you think a team, would take CJ Stroud at?
I think he's the second quarterback off the board. So I mean, if the Bears trade out, I think Houston at 2, that's who they're taking.
Right.
I think he's the next guy off the board. And then unfortunately, I think another team's going to take a shot on that kid from Kentucky. And I think
Will Levis.
Yeah, I think he's our next Ryan Leaf.
Wow.
And the one quarterback that I think who isn't getting the love he deserves, and I think a team should take a shot on him, is that kid from Tennessee. He balled out until he got hurt. I mean,
Hayden Hooker.
he made Tennessee a contender.
Right.
And I feel like he's going to, whatever team ends up getting him, I think we're all going to look back and it's going to kind of be like, it's going to be kind of like the Josh Allen draft. Baker Mayfield and all these guys went before Josh Allen, and we're going to be sitting here going, yeah, this guy was good. This guy had a couple solid seasons, but how did this guy slip to 110, 111 in the draft? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. Hayden Hooker, even Max Duggan is a guy later in this draft. Some people are saying Stetson Bennett. I don't necessarily agree. I think Stetson Bennett is going to be, Mr. XFL in a couple of years. Good in college, but I just don't know if he has some of the talents at the quarterback position. Maybe Bill Belichick takes these, guys who are, succeeded in college and, won a natty like he did with Tom Brady, and then insert them into his lineup. But I don't know about Stetson Bennett. Max Duggan is there in the later rounds. There's a lot of quarterbacks that you could go to, even in the later rounds, teams that, they have kind of a quarterback, but they're not sure, kind of like a Patriots, kind of like a Chicago Bears, where they like their quarterback, but they're not in love with their quarterback. But moving on to one of our final segments here is we want to know your top 10 quarterbacks in the league, starting from number 10 to the number 1 quarterback in the league. What is your top 10 quarterbacks in the league?
Top 10.
And some of your reasons why.
Yeah. So, I mean, the top 3 is the same for, I think, pretty much everyone. Just in whatever order you want to put them in. Like, I'm not going to harp on anyone. 1 is Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's had probably the best, if you could say the best or second best start as an NFL quarterback by this point in his career.
Right.
3 Super Bowl appearances, 2 wins, 2 MVPs. Tom Brady went 3 for 3 with 2 final Super Bowl MVPs. So whatever order you want to put them in. But yeah, I mean, Mahomes is 1 easily.
Right.
Then 2 for me is Joe Burrow. Mahomes has played against all the top quarterbacks, and Joe Burrow, he's right now, he still has more wins on him in the head-to-head matchup.
Right.
And they're now each 1-1 in the AFC Championship game against each other.
Right.
So, Joe Burrow, to me, just he's the arm talent is, I think, second to almost none in the league. The decision making is second to almost none. The only person who I put over him is Mahomes in those 2 categories.
Right.
3, I have Josh Allen. He's one of the most dynamic players in the league with his running and throwing capabilities. His decision making is what keeps him out of that top 2 conversation. And we talked about it earlier, just a lot of the interceptions, a lot of trying to fit the ball down the field in a tight window. So the decision making for me is what keeps him out of that top 2. But dynamically, I mean, he's probably the second or third best rushing quarterback in the league. He's probably the third or fourth best throwing quarterback in the league. And arm strength wise, he's probably number one. I don't think there's a quarterback in the league who can throw a deep ball better than him. He
Yeah.
dots 60, 70 yards down the field like it's nothing sometimes, and it's insane to me. 4, I got to give it to Jalen Hurts. He just took the team to a Super Bowl. He's dynamic. He can run. He can pass. He can, he's good at decision making. The one thing I would say, though, is he needs to run a little bit less. I mean, that shoulder injury kind of cost him an MVP this season.
Right.
So, he's definitely up there. He puts together a couple more good seasons. He could leapfrog Josh Allen and maybe even Joe Burrow.
Wow.
But right now he sits at number 4 for me. Number 5, I'll probably have to give it to Lamar Jackson. The athleticism is just off the charts. The running capabilities is insane. I mean, there's no other quarterback in the league that can scramble around the pocket and then just cut loose and go 70 yards for a touchdown.
Right.
It's insane. And his joystick capabilities on the field, it's like watching a Madden game sometimes when he just stops on a dime and you just see a defender fly past him and you're like, how did he just stop? Like his knees should be gone.
Right.
And so that I put him at 5 just because he's the most athletic quarterback in the league. He might be one of the most athletic players in the league.
Right. And I like that top 5. I really don't have a problem with it. One, of course, like you said, for me, my top 5 real quick is you got Patrick Mahomes. It's hard to go another direction. The guy you said, who's had the most success for him is Joe Burrow. But, Joe Burrow, until he can get over that hump, get that Super Bowl, get those MVPs. I just think Mahomes, like you said, the only player that you can compare the first 5 years to is maybe a Tom Brady. And that's Tom Brady, Like that's, we don't just throw that out lightly. Mahomes' first 5 years are similar to a guy like Tom Brady. You got to put him at the best in the league. And then, like you said, Joe Burrow. At first, I was kind of leaning towards Josh Allen for the longest, but I look back and I think about it. The way that Joe Burrow is able to compete versus a guy like Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo on a consistent basis, and with 3-0 versus them, like no one does that versus the Chiefs. And then number 3, Josh Allen. Usually makes all the right throws, can run, pass. He's like just like Cam Newton at number 3. Number 4, Jalen Hurts. Phenomenal season. Probably would have won MVP if not for the shoulder injury. Like you said, I love Jalen Hurts. I'm a Sooners guy, so I love what he did his last year in Oklahoma. The running, the way he's able to pass the ball now, I think he's the future in the NFC because there's not too many quarterbacks right now in the NFC. And then number 5, I'm still going to throw a guy like Aaron Rodgers in there. He still won the 2 MVPs. I just think if he can get another good wide receiver in system, because I just think this year for the Packers, what he was dealing with was not great. Alan Lazard was injured a lot of the year. His best receiver at times was Randall Cobb, or I think it's Rambo or
Watts.
Romeo. I don't remember his last name, but Romeo. Those are that's what he was dealing with on the offensive side of the ball. So those are top 5. Do you have any honorable mentions you think next year can be right there in those top 5?
Yeah, I mean, if Trevor Lawrence takes a huge step forward, he could make an argument to get in that top 5. If Aaron Rodgers gets to a new team and has an Aaron Rodgers type season,
again, he's right back into that conversation. This year, watching the Aaron Rodgers game, I know he didn't have the best weapons, but it just seemed like at times the arm strength might finally be kind of faltering at times. He kind of reminded me a little bit of Big Ben there at the end, where sometimes he had to heave it a little bit more to get the distance he needed, so the accuracy was off.
Yeah.
I feel like he's coming to that point in his career where you know, father time's undefeated with pro
Yeah.
athletes. So, he's finally on the downhill turn, I think, of his talent and athleticism and abilities, where he's just finally getting edged out of that top five.
Yeah, yeah, I could see it. Unless he goes with a team with, kind of like again Tom Brady, where he kind of like, hey, I did a lot early in my career. Can we kind of put some talent around me, and I'll use what I've had, up here the last 15 years or so to try to lead our team to a Super Bowl. So for our last take here, we like to do something fun. Is we're going to start doing. We're going to put you in the hot seat. Your
Okay.
your seat there is flaming hot. You're burning your hand. What is your hot take? And I mean, I want to hear a hot take going into next season. This may burn the audience's eardrums, so be a little careful. But just a
Yeah.
hot take going into next season.
So I have three that
Okay,
I've
three
been
is
I've
three,
been
folks. Everyone, take a step back from your phone, your computer, wherever you may be watching. Caution, folks.
so these are pretty insane, but the first one is the Detroit Lions win their first Super Bowl.
Wow. That's hot. It's starting off hot, folks.
And and there's a very easy road for it. They get a few defensive pieces where that defense goes from being, what was it, like 24, 25th this year, I think, an
Right.
average, to being 10.
Right.
If you can get that defense to 10 and that offense does exactly what it did this past season, there is a road there for them to win a Super Bowl. The NFC isn't strong.
I agree.
Your hardest two opponents are San Fran and the Eagles. Their division is weak, so they could get out of the regular season pretty healthy. There's an easy road for them where they could be very scary coming into the playoffs, fully healthy, with a few new defensive pieces, and make their way to the Super Bowl and win it.
The Detroit Lions, you heard it here first, folks. So if we're watching this in February of 2024, you'll be able to say you're the first person that said the Detroit Lions, as we know of right now, could win the Super Bowl as a hot take. But hey, it still counts.
And not only am I saying it, but for early season bets, I threw $20 on Detroit to make the Super Bowl this year.
There you go. We may be talking to a very rich man, folks. You guys are hearing this. I want you guys to maybe go put a little $20, $10, whatever it may be, on the Detroit Lions, because then you can thank Josh later. You can go to his TikTok, you can DM him and say, "Thank you so much. I'm now a rich man." And that was hot. Like that was fuego. Now what is your next one? You said you had
So,
three. Number
Yeah.
two.
So then the next one is not as crazy. I feel like a lot of people won't be as upset by it, but
the Miami Dolphins make it to the Super Bowl. So we have a Detroit-Miami Super Bowl.
Wow, the underdog bowl.
Miami, once again, though, the road is pretty clear for them. A few defensive pieces to make that defense from average to below average to above average, top 10, keep Tua healthy, and get a running back. You have arguably
maybe Josh Jacobs.
Yeah. You have arguably the third best wide receiving duo in the league.
Right.
I mean, you could say top three. I mean, what? Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, A.J. Brown, Smith,
Tua
Hill,
and
Waddle.
Tyreek. Yeah,
Yeah.
excuse me, Hill Waddle. Yeah.
I mean, you're right there. You're top. You already have you have a good tight end. You have a decent offensive line. You keep Tua healthy, get a running back, add a few defensive pieces. They could be scary.
Dang, Miami Dolphins versus the Detroit Lions. Again, Dolphins fans. We got some Dolphins fans up all the pod. If you're hearing this, you're probably loving Josh right now. Detroit fans, they may send you the keys of the city because that city has been out in the desert for a long time. They're looking for a Super Bowl. But what is your third and final hot take here on Hot Mike, the hot seat here on the TBT podcast?
So this one I think might shock a lot of people, but I have Cleveland finishing last
Oh,
in the whole NFL.
wow.
I think they finished last. I think Deshaun Watson has a average to below average Deshaun Watson season. Kareem Hunt's probably out the door. So if Nick Chubb gets hurt, that running game disappears. They need defensive pieces. They have a lot of money wrapped up in Deshaun Watson. And then the big offseason topic after next season, when Cleveland's sitting at the 101 pick, is do you draft a quarterback and move on from Deshaun Watson?
Wow. So on one hand, you have Detroit, or they're going to hand you the keys to the city. On the other hand, you have every Ohioan, or at least everybody in Cleveland, ready to wring your neck. I mean, dude, what are you going to do? Maybe I thought, hey, is he going to have another team that's been on the desert? Is he saying they make the AFC championship or something? But Cleveland finishing last, and they're talking about a QB switch at the end of the season.
And it makes sense. I mean, you're losing Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb
Right.
has shown he can't stay healthy all season because of how he runs. He's a very physical runner. Outside of Amari Cooper, you don't really have much in wide receiver weapons.
Right.
David Njoku has never taken that leap forward to be the tight end that they thought they were drafting.
Yeah.
Your defense has two good players on it, and Myles Garrett and Ward at cornerback.
Yeah.
You let Clowney walk. You're probably going to end up losing. I think it's their strong safety who had a decent season. He's a free agent this year.
Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah. You're paying Deshaun Watson a crap ton of money. And I think what's going to end up happening is you're almost going to have almost like what the Cowboys are dealing with right now with Zeke and Dak, where you're going to have so much money wrapped up in 2 or 3 players that you're not going to be able to put a solid team on the field.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're one injury away from that team going 3-15.
Wow. I mean, Cleveland, I'm sorry, Josh, he's looking into his glass bowl, and he's saying you may return to the dark days of Cleveland, back to the dark days. So we'll definitely have to put those down in the first ever hot take, hot seat, hot mic zone. We have Cleveland being one of the worst teams, getting the first pick. And then we have Detroit winning the Super Bowl, and Miami playing Detroit in the Super Bowl.
And you know what? I just realized what's even be worse about that Cleveland one is that first overall pick. That's going to go to Houston because they gave it up for Deshaun Watson.
Oh, so Houston looks like they will maybe be in the Caleb Williams, lottery. But Cleveland could be in a nightmare situation, trading all those picks for a guy like Deshaun Watson. Is there anything you want to add for this upcoming season? Any last takes you want the people to know about, some of your opinions going into the offseason, going into the drafts you may have about a quarterback, about the Steelers, or anything of that nature?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Chargers. They signed some big names last year, and a bunch of them got hurt.
Right.
Their wide receivers couldn't stay healthy. I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on them.
I feel like Detroit is getting not enough love for what they did this offseason, and that's why I have them as a Super Bowl contender.
Right.
And I feel like Geno Smith is not getting a lot of love.
Right.
I mean, I feel like he needs to get re-signed by Seattle, but I mean, the dude had a pretty historic season. He was the most accurate quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
And that's saying something when you're talking about he's competing against Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence. He was the
Yeah.
most accurate. And he set the single season record for Seattle for most passing yards. And let's not forget, they just moved on from Super Bowl champion and MVP Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson.
So I feel like, I don't think Seattle will, do anything spectacular, like win a Super Bowl or anything, but they're a playoff team going into this year. And I see a lot of people having them not as a wild card team.
Right.
And they're not losing much. They have a bunch of draft picks. They strengthen that defense a little bit. They get lucky again and nail on a couple first round picks like they did this year for that defense. And Pete Carroll needed to be coach of the year.
Yeah, shout out Geno Smith, really. His famous quote, they wrote me off, but I did not write back. A great season by the Seahawks. If they can make some moves, that's another team in the NFC side that could have another type of jump. Before we get out of here, Josh, tell the people where they can keep up with some of your sports content.
Yeah, so Athletic Nerd on TikTok and B-Ball23 Josh on TikTok are my two go-to. I do sports, I do funny stuff, and I just show the disaster of my life. So, if you want to laugh and learn about football and basketball, come on over. And then I am in the process of working with some people, name to be determined, for a podcast for fantasy football. We're big fantasy football guys. So we're going to try to help you all win some championships and collect some championship belts.
Not only, guys, is he going to try to put money in your pocket, telling you to bet on the Lions, but he's also going to put money and make your friends look stupid in fantasy football. So when that's up, guys, you'll definitely have to check it out. Make sure you guys go check him out on TikTok. We're on there all the time talking about sports, girls, food, whatever it may be. Anything goes on our lives. We talk about everything. We have some great people on there. One of our regulars on here, Lawrence, is usually on there. So you guys got to go check him out on TikTok. Josh, we'd love to have you on the show again sometime soon, get you in the rotation. Thanks for being on the show, man.
No problem, man. Glad to have you. And I'll end with a piece of Dynasty fantasy football advice.
If you are the 101 pick or 102, I would target Breece Hall or Pierce to be the running back of your future and to have a cornerstone staple piece. And if you decide to go wide
write
out,
that down.
If you decide to go wide out, Wilson from the Jets, because there's not many rookie wideouts who did what he did, and George Pickens, because the dude just catches the ball no matter what. One-handed, two-handed, flipping through the air. I don't get it. That Stickum is hella good in the NFL, I guess.
All right, there we go. I wrote that down, guys. You guys try to win your fantasy league. Write that down right now. Josh, thank you so much again for being on the show.
Glad to be on, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, we will see you guys on another edition, a Friday edition of the TPT podcast. We will have a new guest on that is determined to be. We will release that in the midweek. We will see you guys next time on the TPT podcast. Thank you for watching. If you guys want more videos just like that, head over to Instagram or on TikTok. Also, check out each and every one of our videos here on YouTube each week.